It was established very early on in both the show and the books that the White Walkers are the biggest threat the characters are going to have to deal with. It was in the prologue chapter of the first book and first scene of Game of Thrones where we learned some of the abilities the White Walkers have. But then, one of the weakest characters killed one, and it didn't seem so bad ever since. Introducing a more powerful leader was necessary if they were going to be a credible threat with the same level of intimidation they once had. And then we got the Night King, the main antagonist, a character that has never been introduced in the books, but will likely appear, for the same reason he appeared in the show. Far past the wall, in the northernmost part of this world, is a place called the Lands of Always Winter. It seems like this is where the Night King has been living for thousands of years, waiting to attack again. And yeah, that's how old he is. The children of the forest were at war with the First Men 12,000 years ago, when humans first migrated to Westeros from Essos. They warred for 2,000 years, so sometime in this time period, the children of the forest decided to use their magic to turn a man into something else with a dragonglass dagger. They hoped to create a soldier that could help them win the war they were losing. This is something that only happened in the show, so there's very little detail surrounding this scene. That goes for everything about the Night King. I usually reference the books in my videos since George Martin tends to go really in depth, but this time I only have Game of Thrones to work with. I don't mind that it was the children of the forest that created him, because that does give him a motive for all his actions. I do find the creation process a little weird though. A dragonglass dagger was all it took to create the most powerful being in the series. This transformation made him immortal. Maybe immortality isn't the best word, because odds are he can die. I guess something like eternal youth or longevity, whatever you want to call it. But his most powerful ability is the power to create White Walkers of his own, with just a touch. It's not clear if they need to be a male baby at first, but that's all Craster was offering them. And if he could turn anyone into a White Walker, he would have a lot more than the few we've seen. White Walkers make the greatest soldiers. They move quickly and lightly, leaving no footprints behind, so you can't track them. They're expert fighters who fight with magical ice weapons. Their ice weapons are so cold and sharp that they can easily cut through armor and shatter steel. Their armor in the books is also made with ice magic that camouflages so well that it's see-through. But that was a little much for the show to include. Cold weather and mists appear every time they are around, which I think is part of their ice magic. I think it's safe to transfer these abilities to the Night King as well. Especially the expert fighting. Just look at what he did to Viserion with ease. The Night King and even his White Walkers are able to raise armies of the dead called Whites. They're nowhere near as powerful as the White Walkers, but with how easily they can resurrect the dead and have an ever-growing army, it makes this type of necromancy pretty overpowered. They can't go down by regular means, but they are very weak against fire, dragonglass, and Valyrian steel. Both types of the Night King soldiers seem to be absolutely obedient, unlike the Night King, who we see kill his creators, the Children of the Forest. The only instance we see a White act on his own free will was when Benjen Stark was saved by the Children of the Forest. Again, a dragonglass dagger to the chest was all that was needed to work their magic. Benjen was vulnerable to the Children's magic barriers along with the other Whites. The wall and the Three-Eyed Raven's cave were protected from them, but somehow the Night King was able to mark Bran when he was using his green sight to spy on them. This is just one of those moments where we have to accept the show's writing without looking too deep into it.
He saw me! The Night King! He saw me!
He touched you.
I don't know, he was close, but...
He touched you. He knows you are here. He'll come for you.
It's magic after all, so that's all that's needed to be known to explain it. I think the marking just served as a plot device. We needed to see more of the Night King if he's going to be the main antagonist. It would be pretty lame to have a villain do nothing for the entire series and only have a fight at the end. Intimidation had to be built into his character. Not only that, but the Three-Eyed Raven had to die somehow. He called Bran over all the way back in Season 1. He was training Bran because he knew his time was coming. For Bran to be the new Three-Eyed Raven, the old one had to die. Bran also had to head back south to Winterfell to reunite with his family. There was no way he was just going to stay in the cave forever when all the other Stark kids haven't been together since the first episode. So we learn Greensight isn't an effective tool against the Night King because he can somehow see you and physically touch you. Bran can still work to spy on him, but it isn't as effective. You still have to look for the White Walkers and do all the traveling, but with Greensight, you can just appear anywhere you want. Furthermore, with warging, you can lose your mind in an animal if you remain in it for too long. I'm surprised the Night King didn't just shatter Bran's wrist. Along with their cold and freezing powers, the Night King and White Walkers have an insane amount of strength. Maybe their superhuman strength doesn't apply to people using Greensight, since they're not really there. In the books, the White Walkers only strike at night, Probably because the sun can harm them, kinda like vampires. This would make sense to why they've been waiting so long to strike again. I think they've been waiting 8,000 years to attack again because they were waiting for the perfect winter. At the beginning of the series, they were in the middle of an extremely long summer, a summer so long that Arya and Bran have never seen a winter, so about 10 years. And after a summer this long comes a horrible winter. During that winter, 8,000 years ago, the winter lasted an entire generation. With the world completely covered in darkness, people were starving to death with the lack of vegetation and animals to hunt, which made a perfect scenario for creatures like the White Walkers. We'll see more of this time period in the Game of Thrones spin-off show Above the Long Night. They're already working on the pilot episode, and if whoever is in charge at HBO likes it enough, they'll order an entire season or more. But anyway, the show got rid of that sun weakness, making the Night King way more powerful. Fire also doesn't seem to affect him or the White Walkers the same way it affects their army of whites. Their cold magic completely extinguishes flames when walking near it, but we haven't seen a dragon breathing fire directly at the Night King or a White Walker yet. Their cold magic may not be strong enough to fight it back, or the writers could have it where they just cancel each other out. I don't think any new abilities are going to be introduced in the last season, with the Night King being so overpowered already. Dragons are probably the next most powerful being, and he's able to one-shot them and bring them over to his side. It's going to be a fun episode seeing how Jon will take him out, presumably with his Valyrian steel sword Longclaw, if it does end up being him to do the job. It would be a pretty big twist if another character can do it with some dragon glass or another Valyrian steel weapon. It seems like Season 8 is still a while away. It's supposed to come out in spring 2019, so maybe we'll get a trailer in December or January. But I think I'm done here. Thanks for watching.